guys, and welcome back. So I want to start today by talking about something that I don't think gets enough recognition, especially when we talk about the nervous system, and that is mental load, right? That's the stuff that we're carrying that nobody else sees. So before I even had my first cup of coffee this morning, this was my mental load. I've got to plan out the next 4 videos. I've got to figure out the research that I'm going to do to be able to talk about these things, fun facts, different things to keep them interested, so I'm not just sitting up here blah, blah, blah. I need to circle back and check on my daughter and see how she's doing after her surgery. I need to check in with the other 2, make sure things are going there. Me and the bestie haven't had a chance to reconnect for a couple days, so I need to kind of link into that. I started the laundry the other day, but I don't know if I finished it. It might be camping in the dryer because I didn't have a chance to go back there. Definitely need to switch up and wash the rugs and the bedding today because it's that time of the week. And then I got to go to the grocery store and I got to pick up some stuff because I think Fergus is almost out of food. And then, of course, I've just got to, plan dinner and everything else, right? And my brain had already had a full shift before I even had my first cup of coffee. Right? And the problem is half the time nobody else even knows you're carrying it. I know my youngest daughter doesn't, bless her heart, as she came and dumped off about 6 more things in the middle of all that. It doesn't look heavy, but man, it can feel heavy. And if you've been there, which I am a lot of days, while they didn't necessarily use the phrase mental load back in the day, you can actually read a lot of those herbal texts and see the descriptions of the people they were observing and definitely see the mental load in there. They're not using those words. You're not going to see herbalists, in the 1700s talking about mental load, but you will start to pick up on when people are worn down like that. So I thought that was a good transition for today's herb, which is Blue Vervain. And it's one of those quiet growing plants along roadside, stream banks, wet meadows throughout much of North America. It's tall, elegant, covered in tiny purple flowers. And well, if you weren't looking for it, you would probably miss it. I should get a bumper sticker that says, easily distracted by weeds that will become herbs. So again, that teaches us that as we start to learn these things, we start to notice things more, and they're no longer just randos in our yard. They serve a purpose. But throughout history, different species of vervain have held a high regard, with the Egyptians, Romans, and later European traditions all recorded uses of vervain with ceremonial and symbolic importance, along with medicinal uses. Now, our North American blue vervain has become an important herb in Western herbalism today. And it is definitely, you're going to see it reoccurring in a lot of herbal traditions when you start to study the specific herb in its context. Now, Blue Vervain belongs in the Verbena family, and it prefers moist soil, wet feet, right? You'll often find it growing near ponds, streams, roadside ditches, and damp meadows. It's important to know this because if you're trying to grow it yourself, you have to recreate the environment that it grows in, right? And one of the easiest ways to recognize it is by its tall, upright flower stalks. Instead of one big, large bloom, it produces dozens of tiny little purple flowers that gradually open at different intervals, like our friend Mullen does, right? It's actually a beautiful plant. And once you learn to recognize it, well, that's part of becoming an herbalist, right? So you'll again start to see things. I know I've gotten really bad. I'll be out and riding around and I'm just looking out the window. I'm like, oh, look, there's the echinacea. There's this. So you'll start to see these things, right, as you pay attention. Now, to me, this is where things get interesting, right? Traditional Western herbalists, again, as we know, don't just simply ask, what's your symptom? Here's your herb, right? So in this case, we would ask something like, what kind of person is standing in front of me, right? Blue Vervain became associated with people who seem driven, responsible, always planning. Our notes have notes. We have the 10-year, the 15, and the 30-year plan, and they're all working together. And we're always carrying the next responsibility before finishing the current one. And sometimes we feel the drive to pick up other responsibilities that are not ours. We struggle to relax, and our mind is already solving tomorrow's problem before it even gets here. And I just called myself out. I'm describing patterns, right? I'm not making a diagnosis. It's one of the biggest differences between memorizing herbs and thinking like an herbalist. I would probably classify this person more of a type A personality. But yeah, driving forces, right? So traditionally, Blue Vervain has been used to support a tense or overworked nervous system, rest and support during times of mental strain, healthy digestion, particularly when tension seems to be affecting the stomach, general nervous system support, and traditionally, herbalists have chose Blue Vervain based on the overall presentation of the person and not just one single complaint. Modern research on Blue Vervain is still developing. Laboratory studies have identified compounds with interesting biological activity, but many of its traditional usage hasn't been confirmed yet in large, high-quality human clinical trials, right? And that's okay. Science is still asking the question that herbalists traditionally asked to begin with, right? So we're starting to understand the chemistry of the plant and how it affects with individuals, which I find quite fascinating. It's going a little bit more than just the known traditions. So one thing I do not want you to do is hear today's video and think, I'm overwhelmed, so I'm going to take some Blue Vervain. Yeah, don't do that. That's not how herbalism works. Instead, I want you to start noticing the pattern, right? What does overwhelm actually look like? My overwhelmed might be different than your overwhelmed, right? My overwhelmed compared to a 2-year-old's overwhelmed is definitely different. Are you exhausted? Are you sleeping poorly? Do you have muscle tension? Are you having any digestive complaints? Are you carrying everyone else's responsibilities and forgetting to take care of yourself? Those are all kinds of questions that help us get to the right place. As always, the not fun part of the video, we'll discuss safety. So, like every herb, Blue Vervain deserves respect. It's generally used in moderation, but medicinal amounts may not be appropriate during pregnancy because traditional concerns regarding uterine stimulation, which you don't want at certain points in pregnancy at all. So if you're taking prescription medications or have any underlying medical conditions, breastfeeding, pregnant, etc., please, as always, check in with your health professional before we just start popping pills or teas. Remember, natural does not mean harmless. Responsible herbalism always includes understanding when your plant is appropriate. We're trying to unlearn just because it's natural, I can eat as much as I want. We've all learned lettuce is not true about that anymore, so let's continue. So let's imagine somebody just walked into my video and says, I'm overwhelmed. Cool, me too. But I'm not thinking, right? Where are my overwhelmed herbs, right? I want you to tell me your story, right? Like, how long have you felt this way? What does a typical day look like? How are you sleeping? What have you been eating? Did you switch your diet recently? Did you all of a sudden decide to go keto overnight? Like, what's going on with you, right? What responsibilities are you carrying that nobody else sees or chooses not to notice? Because herbs do not replace listening, and sometimes listening is sometimes the biggest impact on someone's nervous system, just knowing that they can just kind of dump things off, right? If there's one thing I hope you remember from today's lesson, don't remember Blue Vervain as the herb for stress. Remember it as the plant that reminds us to notice the weight we are carrying before it becomes too heavy and real damage is done. Sometimes the first step towards wellness isn't finding the perfect herb. It's finally admitting I'm carrying more than I was meant to carry, and it's time for some people to start helping out around here, right? So I'd love to hear from you in the comment section, right? When you hear the phrase mental load, what comes to mind? It's always interesting to see my non-children people versus my children people versus my single versus my married versus my divorced with the comments on that, because everybody's overwhelmed and mental load is very different, right? So I do think it's important to recognize what we are carrying, and when we can delegate, we delegate. And if we don't need to carry it, put it down. Stop carrying it, right? Sometimes we mull over stuff for way too long when we just need to be like, you know what? That one's not mine to carry anymore. Especially when I'm making today's list and my child comes in and reminds me of 6 other things that they needed me to do that they forgot to tell me until the last minute. Well, so today we're going to learn delegation. So until next time, guys, stay rooted, stay curious, and as always, keep growing in grace.